Zack Snyder fans and Snyderverse supporters just got shocking news after a huge update that shook the entire conversation about what comes next for these franchises. Okay, so the news hit fast because insiders said that the Zack Snyder situation has shifted the moment that the Snyderverse, came back into play through Paramount's move. So reports confirm that Zack Snyder may be now tied up into the corporate fight as the Saudis and Jared Kushner back Paramount's hostile takeover attempt of Warner Brothers Discovery. Fans immediately pointed to how the Snyderverse getting attention again changed the tone of this battle. Okay, so basically the involvement of these groups only highlights how Zack Snyder just simply seems to keep influencing every part of this Hollywood struggle. Okay, so Netflix winning the bid set off, the reaction that pushed Zack Snyder back into the conversation through Gunn and Safran's Bloomberg article. Now that article made it clear their 6-month extension leaves them exposed while the Snyderverse base watches their uncertainty. The fact that Snyder resurfaced publicly with new momentum on the same day only intensified the pressure. Gunn and Safran now face a Hollywood landscape where Snyder and the Snyderverse are still active factors that they, no longer can ignore. Okay, so just yesterday, Zack Snyder, teased more stories with Henry Cavill's Superman, and that helped push the Snyderverse buzz even higher. And his timing forced industry observers to reconsider how much influence he still carries. Now, every time Zack Snyder steps forward, it disrupts whatever the narrative that the studios are trying to push. Now, Henry Cavill's Superman that's tied to the Snyderverse keeps fueling speculation no executive can easily brush aside. Okay, so after Netflix won the bid and stuff, Paramount escalated instantly, and reports, connected to this directly to the renewed heat around Zack Snyder and the Snyderverse itself. So Paramount announced its hostile takeover of WBD and made it clear they intend to pull the company out of the next Netflix's hands. Now, the move injected more uncertainty, the same type of uncertainty that always seems to bring Zack Snyder back into center view. Now, as the Snyderverse narrative resurfaces, the takeover battle becomes harder for Netflix to frame as settled. Okay, so this is also breaking earlier today on thatpropclicks.com. Shout out to Marvin Montanaro for this, where Warner Brothers Discovery abruptly postpones employee town hall as Paramount hostile takeover bid rages on. Okay, so this is definitely something interesting, where the article basically go into detail about, the fact that, it's reported to Marvin Montanaro as well as Jonas J. Campbell announced on WWE's Pro Show this morning that there's chaos behind the scenes. Okay, so then there's also added the key questions where the shareholders for Warner Brothers Discovery should be asking, such as, did Warner Brothers Discovery thoroughly review Paramount Skydance's thing $10 per share stock price with all cash offer given to track the outreach and stuff. And then there's also matter of fact, let me zoom in even further. Okay, it's also asked if so, then why did Warner Brothers agree to Netflix's proposal with lower economic value and less certainty? What value is Warner Brothers Discovery attributing to remaining global networks equity and stuff that shareholders would receive? What supports the view that Netflix can clear regulatory hurdles in a reasonable time frame or at all, given the skepticism from Department of Justice and bipartisan antitrust concerns? Is this realistic? And then there's the last one, the fifth one: was the sale process fair and robust? Did it serve shareholders' best interests? Okay, and the article does go into where there's internal anxiety and stuff after the surprise bid from Paramount Okay, so they're not playing basically. Okay, this is definitely an all-out bidding war and stuff. So definitely, Paramount has officially announced the takeover, and the reactions from President Trump, Netflix, and even WBD happened within hours as Zack Snyder conversations surged again. Now, the presence in fan discussions made everything feel less stable for Netflix, and Trump responded cautiously. But the moment his comments went out, people connected to them with the timing around Snyder. You see, each side now has to calculate how the community shifts public pressure. Okay, so basically, Paramount dropped, $108 billion bid to block the Netflix takeover, as you all know, escalated tension as mentions of Snyder continue rising. And when this happened, that's when, the whole employee town hall for Warner Brothers abruptly just had been postponed. Now, the momentum created an environment where nobody believes this will end quietly. Now, the all-cash tender offer was designed to rip Warner Brothers away from before Netflix locks the deal, and Snyder discussions added noise that they didn't expect. So this often becomes louder when executives make aggressive moves, okay? And that's not surprising because guess what? Paramount argued their offer is stronger than Netflix's, which is true, which also drew attention to leadership changes many think connect back to Snyder and his uncertain status with Warner Brothers. Now, critics called Warner Brothers Discovery support for Netflix built on a fictional valuation, while the audience highlighted past management failures. The challenge Warner Brothers board brings Snyder back into focus because fans see this as another turning point. You see, when this gets tied to instability, guess what? Chatter spreads instantly. Okay, so Ellison blasted Netflix's deal and insisted the company take the offer directly to shareholders, while Zack Snyder watched every move, or so we think. The statement pushed the Snyderverse discussion even further because it signaled frustration with the current leadership. But at the same time, Ellison said delays were over, which, people compared to past mishandling tied to Zack Snyder. Okay. The Snyderverse itself always gains, traction when executives show impatience with the Warner Brothers decision making. Okay. So yeah, definitely the bid is backed by Larry Ellison, Redbird, and even major banks, which again overlap with the renewed attention on Snyder and the Snyderverse throughout the day. People connected the scale of this deal to how previous financial bad choices affected Snyder projects at Warner Brothers Discovery. Now, strong backing makes the move look legitimate, and the Snyderverse supporters treat that as as a sign the old leadership may lose control. Mentioning Snyder in this climate carries more weight than usual. Okay, so back to this article from thatpartplace.com. Basically the deal is still a flashpoint. Nothing's been finalized and stuff, but why would he postpone the town hall now? You see, it says here town halls typically offer leadership an opportunity to calm nerves and reinforce stability, so the sudden cancellation raises questions. And going on saying, was the leadership team concerned that the employee questions would veer too sharply toward the Paramount offer, the Netflix deal, or the board's handling of negotiations? The executives need more time to shift internal messaging that aligns with the fast evolving external situation? Or did they simply recognize that anything said publicly, even to staff, will become instant headline fodder? Okay. So yeah, it was a postponed town hall. It says here, during a major acquisition battle rarely signals confidence. Okay, so basically David Zaslav is going for the money. Who has the most money? Who's willing to pay the most money and stuff? And then here talking about Paramount is still advancing this hostile takeover bid. We all know that. Okay, and of course they offer more money, over like $107 billion. Okay. So they're pushing ahead with this hostile takeover approach. One driven by the belief where Warner Brothers and the leadership failed the shareholders by rejecting what Paramount considered a superior offer. Okay. So yeah, it seems to me that there's something that scandalous that's going on behind the scenes. Okay, where David Zaslav might have made the wrong choice in trying to go with Netflix, whereas Paramount had a better offer. Seems to me, and it was also stated that Zaslav's good friends with the CEO of Netflix. Okay, and also Netflix have people on the board from the former Obama and as well as Bush administrations and stuff. So that right there should tell you everything. Now, Paramount argued regulators will oppose a Netflix Warner Brothers merger, and the conversation again swung toward how Zack Snyder was handled under past executives before the Snyderverse was shut down. Okay, so the claim about a global monopoly raised new questions about whether Netflix would support anything related to Zack Snyder. Fans pointed out that Netflix never undertook large-scale acquisitions and wondered how that affects the Snyderverse prospects. You see, these regulatory hurdles bring Zack Snyder back into the debate, whether Netflix wants it to or not. So the funding details dropped next, confirming Middle Eastern sovereign funds like Saudi Arabia and Kushner's affinity partners are backing the bid as Snyder's discussions keep climbing. This matched months of insider talk that always included the resurgence. Now, the confirmation just simply went on ahead and made many revisit early claims about Snyder being tied to large-scale entertainment shifts. So this sits at the center of every conversation, even when the topic is finance, okay? So basically, Hollywood's shift toward Saudi partnerships aligns with this takeover moment, and fans again connected it to Snyder, given his global recognition and the fan base. Now, Paramount's disclosure lined up with insider leaks, creating, more speculation around Snyder. President Trump even publicly backed away from, both companies, while media noted the timing against the rise of the narrative. Now, even neutrality from Trump affects how Zack Snyder is perceived in this particular situation. Okay, so Trump has definitely, explained he knows the companies, but wants to review their market share before supporting either one. And Zack Snyder fans watched closely because this could actually influence the Snyderverse future. Earlier reporting suggested that Trump, leaned toward Netflix, which sparked debate about, how Zack Snyder fits into that outcome. And now his neutrality leaves room for shifting alliances that may affect Zack Snyder. You see, whether politics touch Hollywood, the Snyderverse finds a way back into the discussion itself. Okay, so Sarando's pushed back, saying that Netflix is confident and happy with the deal, even as the Zack Snyder topics continued moving across social platforms tied to the Snyderverse revival. He called the takeover attempt expected, but Netflix acted like, nothing changed. Meanwhile, fans pointed out how often Zack Snyder becomes part of the conversation when Hollywood leadership gets rattled. Okay, so definitely the Snyderverse presence does signal, the environment far from stable. Okay, so Warner Brothers Discovery told shareholders not to act until the board reviews Paramount's bid, and the uncertainty again feeds into questions about Zack Snyder and the Snyderverse direction. Okay, so yeah, definitely Hollywood now sees a three-way corporate war shaping its future, and Zack Snyder remains the reference point because of how divided the industry is. Paramount, Netflix, and Warner Brothers are trapped in a battle that keeps bringing Zack Snyder into the narrative. Now, as the Snyderverse, stays visible, the outcome of this fight will affect every franchise caught in the middle. So let me know your thoughts about this in the comments below. Be sure to smash the like button, share the video far and wide across social media, subscribe to the channel, turn on the bell for future uploads notifications, and I'll see you all in the next one. Until then, peace.